The transport ship came down like a dying bird, its engines coughing smoke as it crossed the gray sky of Luma 9. The surface of the moon shimmered under two pale suns, their light soft and distant. When the ship hit the plain, it slid across the dust before coming to rest near a cluster of crystal rocks. For a long while, nothing moved. Then a man stepped out through the broken hatch. His name was Terran. He was a builder by trade, a traveler by chance, and a man who had lost the noise of cities long ago. When he looked around, he saw nothing but a wide-open land. The air was thin, but the suit helped him breathe. The ground beneath his boots made a soft crunching sound. He felt alone, but not afraid. After years of serving on space stations crowded with people and machines, silence felt like peace. He started his work the same day. From the wrecked ship, he gathered what was still useful: metal panels, power cells, and a few tools. He set up a small camp near a stream that glowed faintly blue under the suns. The water was clean and tasted like cold stone. At night, he slept under the stars that burned steady in the black sky. The silence of Luma 9 wrapped around him like a blanket. Every morning, Terran rose before sunrise. He walked out to a small ridge overlooking the plain and stood there for a few minutes, watching the mist drift across the ground. Then he began to build. He used stones from the ridge and scraps from the ship to form the base of his shelter. His hands moved with slow patience. Each wall he raised made him feel more alive. The work gave rhythm to his days and meaning to his silence. He did not know he was being watched. Far beyond the ridge, hidden among the glowing trees, a figure stood in the shadows. Her name was Muriel, though Terran had never heard it. She belonged to a species that once lived freely on this moon before storms from the outer rings tore through their homes. Now she was the only one left, a widow of a vanished people. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes deep green like wet moss. For years she had lived alone in a cave near the cliffs, surviving on roots and water, speaking to no one. She thought her world would never change. Until the day she saw the falling light from the sky. When she first saw Terran step from the wreck, she hid among the trees. She thought he was a warrior or a hunter, but he carried no weapon, only tools. Day after day she watched from a distance. The human never shouted or destroyed. He gathered stone and metal. He built instead of taking. His voice when he spoke to himself was quiet. She had not seen such calm in any creature since her mate had passed away long ago. Terran worked through wind and cold, his clothes worn and his hands rough. Sometimes he would stop and look around, feeling the faint sense that something was near. Once he thought he saw a shape among the trees, a soft gleam that vanished when he turned. He told himself it was his mind playing tricks. He had been alone for too long. Still, at night, he built a small fire and placed an extra cup of water beside it, as if for a guest he could not see. Luma 9 was not an easy place to live. The air shifted with strange storms that came without warning. One morning, a silver mist rolled over the valley and covered everything. The suns turned into faint blurs of light. Terran stayed near his half-finished shelter, working with care. He tied heavy stones to the corners of his roof so the wind would not lift them. He did not notice that in the mist a pair of eyes followed his every move. Muriel stood in silence, watching him from behind a fallen tree. She was curious about the way he worked. Humans were said to be restless, always changing the world to suit themselves. But this one shaped his home with respect. He cleared only a small circle of land, leaving the rest untouched. He spoke to the soil as if it could hear him. When he rested, he sat by the stream and listened to the quiet hum of the planet. To Muriel, it was a strange kind of song. As the days passed, the house began to take shape. It had strong walls, a low roof, and a small window facing the ridge. Terran built a door from the ship's metal panel, painting it with a layer of ground stone that shone faint blue in the light. When the door closed, the sound echoed softly like a promise of safety. He stood back and looked at his work. It was small, but it was his. A home built by his own hands on a silent world. That night, he lit a small fire outside the door and cooked a meal from dried rations. The smell spread through the air, carried by the wind. In the distance, Muriel smelled it too. It reminded her of the nights when her people had shared food and laughter. Her heart ached with a mix of sorrow and longing. She crept closer, keeping to the shadows until she could see the glow of the fire. Terran sat near it, staring into the flames, lost in thought. He looked tired but peaceful. Without knowing why, Muriel stayed there, watching until the fire burned down to embers. days turned into weeks. Taryn's home grew stronger. He built shelves, a water collector, and a small windmill to power the lights inside. He planted a few seeds near the stream and marked the area with small stones. His hands were steady, his movements sure. He worked alone, yet there was grace in his effort. At night, he wrote in a small logbook recording each day's progress. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt like something living shared it with him. One evening, while gathering stones near the forest edge, Taryn found footprints. They were not his. They were slender and longer than a human's, the toes slightly webbed like a creature of both land and water. He knelt beside them, tracing the outline with his gloved hand. They were fresh. For a moment he looked toward the trees and thought he saw movement, a shimmer between the trunks. He called out a simple greeting, but there was no reply. Only the soft rustle of leaves. He smiled faintly and returned to his work. Muriel heard his voice and felt fear mix with hope. No human had ever spoken to her kind in peace before. She wanted to step out to show herself, but her courage failed. Instead, she returned to her cave that night and sat near her crystal lantern. The light flickered across the walls. She thought of the human's calm face and the home he built from broken things. It stirred something deep within her, a memory of building beside her mate long ago. For the first time in many years, she whispered a word aloud, a soft sound that meant life in her lost language. When the next storm came, Taryn stayed inside his shelter. The wind howled over the ridge, shaking the walls. Water leaked through a corner of the roof. He worked quickly to seal it, but one of the support beams cracked. As he tried to fix it, the sound of something heavy falling outside startled him. He stepped out into the storm, shielding his face from the rain. The outer wall had shifted, leaving a small gap. He began to lift a stone to replace it, but suddenly the weight moved on its own. The stone rose and slid into place as if guided by invisible hands. He froze, watching. When the wind calmed, the wall stood whole again. There was no one there. He searched the area, calling out, but found nothing. The storm soon passed and the suns returned. Near the door, he found a small cluster of glowing roots tied together with a thin vine. He had seen such roots only in the deep caves of Luma 9. Someone had left them for him. He held them carefully, unsure whether to be afraid or thankful. Finally, he placed them on a shelf inside and smiled. Whoever his hidden helper was, they meant no harm. Muriel watched from the cliffs, her heart light for the first time in years. She had helped him even if he never knew. The human had built a home with patience and care, and now she felt part of it in some quiet way. Each night she watched from afar as the small light from his home shone across the plain. It became a sign of warmth in a world that had been cold for too long. And so, the silent builder worked on, never knowing that beyond the trees, an alien widow watched him every night. She watched not with fear or anger, but with wonder, for in his stillness she saw hope, and in his home she saw the beginning of something new. The sun rose softly over Luma 9, spreading pale light across the silver plains. The twin suns cast long shadows on the land, and the air shimmered like glass. In the quiet morning, Taryn stepped outside his small stone home and stretched his arms. His breath fogged in the cool air. He looked at the sky and smiled. Each sunrise reminded him that he had survived another day. The moon was harsh, but it was also peaceful. Here, no one ordered him around. No engines roared in his ears, and no cities drowned his thoughts. Only silence, steady and kind. He checked the small garden he had planted near the stream. The shoots had begun to grow. They glowed faintly in the dim light, a sign that the soil of Luma 9 held strange energy. He watered the plants carefully, whispering to them like old friends. Then he went to work repairing a broken water pipe beside his home. The sound of his hammer echoed softly in the still air. High on the cliffs above, Muriel watched him through the mist. She had been watching him every day since the storm. The glowing roots she had left for him had been accepted. He had not thrown them away. That simple act made her heart feel light. She still remembered the way he had smiled when he found the gift. It had been a long time since she had seen a smile. In her world, before the storms, smiles had been common. Families had lived in bright caves filled with song. Now all of that was gone. Only she remained, silent among the echoes. Muriel crouched near the edge of the cliff, her silver skin reflecting the weak light. Around her neck hung a crystal pendant, the last relic of her people. It was shaped like a tear, glowing faint blue. She held it and whispered words of her ancient language, words of peace and remembrance. Below, the human moved with calm patience. He reminded her of her mate long ago, who had built their home stone by stone beside the river of mist. Watching Taran work felt like watching a memory come alive. She had many chances to leave. The cave stretched deep under the mountains. She could have hidden there forever. But every morning, something pulled her back to the ridge. She wanted to see what the human would do next. Sometimes she brought small gifts. Once she left a smooth crystal near his garden. Another time she placed a few healing herbs by the stream. Each time she came before dawn and left before he could see her. She never meant for him to know she was there. She wanted only to help him in secret, the way the winds helped the trees grow. Taran, meanwhile, had grown used to small mysteries. He often found things that he had not placed himself. A pile of stones neatly stacked near his path, or a set of footprints leading toward the cliffs. He did not feel fear. Instead, he felt a strange comfort. It was as if the planet itself had accepted him and sent some spirit to watch over him. Sometimes, as he worked in the evening light, he spoke softly to the empty air, thanking whoever or whatever was near. He did not expect an answer, yet speaking felt right. As the days passed, he began to explore farther from his home. He carried a walking stick and a small pack of food and tools. The land beyond the ridge was filled with strange beauty. Crystals grew from the ground like frozen fire, and streams of blue water ran between glowing rocks. The air hummed faintly, carrying the memory of distant storms. Once he found the remains of what looked like a wall made of carved stone. It was covered with strange markings, worn by time. He traced them with his fingers and wondered who had built them. He had no idea that the one who watched him every night knew the answer. From her hidden place, Miriel saw him near the ruins and felt a rush of sorrow. Those stones were all that remained of her people's great hall. Long ago, her kind had built homes across this plain, living in harmony with the sky and the storms. Then came the cosmic winds that burned through the surface. The people of Luma 9 had fled underground, but most did not survive. Only a few had escaped to the cliffs, and one by one, they were lost to time. Miriel had been young then. She had watched her world fall, and now she watched a stranger rebuild upon its ashes. That evening, Taran returned home carrying a piece of carved stone he had found. It had symbols shaped like spirals and lines. He cleaned it and placed it beside his door as decoration. The stone seemed to glow softly in the light of the setting suns. When night came, he sat beside his small fire and wrote in his logbook. He recorded the day's work, the things he had seen, and a short thought before sleep. The silence here feels alive. Miriel watched him from the shadows once again. The firelight danced across his face, showing both strength and weariness. She could hear his quiet voice as he spoke to himself. The sound was gentle and carried a tone of peace. She stayed until he went inside, then crept closer to the house. The walls were firm and the stones well placed. She touched one and felt warmth where his hands had worked. It was a strange feeling, this connection between two beings who had never spoken. She left another small gift, a smooth gem from the caves near his doorstep, and then returned to the darkness. In the following days, the bond between them grew in silence. Taran began to notice a pattern in the gifts. They always appeared after storms or long days of work, as if the giver understood his needs. He wondered if it was an animal or an intelligent being. Sometimes he thought about leaving a message, but he did not know what to say. Words felt too heavy for a presence so light. Instead, he began to leave his own gifts in return. A piece of fruit, a tool, a small carving made from stone. Each time he did, the items disappeared by morning. One night, as Taran was gathering wood near the edge of the forest, he heard something move behind him. It was soft, like the rustle of fabric. He turned but saw only mist and faint lights between the trees. His heart beat faster, but he did not feel threatened. He spoke quietly, saying that he meant no harm and that whoever lived here was welcome. The air felt warmer for a moment, and then the mist faded. When he returned home, he found fresh water and a few glowing fruits placed near his door. Miriel had heard his words. For the first time in many years, someone had spoken kindly into the air that carried her name. Though he did not know her, his voice had felt like sunlight after a long winter. That night she sat by her lantern and thought about the strange creature who built with patience and kindness instead of conquest. She knew humans from stories left behind by travelers long ago. They were said to be restless and loud, but this one was quiet, and that difference intrigued her deeply. As the seasons of Luma 9 shifted, Terran's home became stronger and more beautiful. He built a small path lined with smooth stones and grew patches of moss that glowed softly at night. The place looked alive, a harmony between stone and soil. He sometimes imagined what it would be like to share this peace with another soul. He did not know that he already did. One evening, he looked up at the cliffs and saw a faint light flickering near the top. It was not lightning or reflection. It pulsed slowly like a living heart. He watched it for a long time and whispered a small greeting toward it. The light flickered once more, almost like a reply. That night, he dreamed of walking through silver trees while a soft voice guided him toward a place filled with stars. Miriel watched from her cave where the crystal lantern burned softly. She saw him looking up and felt her breath catch. No one had ever seen her light before, yet somehow, he had found it. She feared that he might climb the cliffs to find her, but he did not. Instead, he respected the distance between them, and that respect filled her with warmth. She understood now that this bond did not need words or faces. It was something deeper, built on quiet gestures and shared loneliness. Weeks passed like this. The human and the widow of Luma 9 lived separate lives connected by silent acts of kindness. The planet itself seemed to watch over them, its skies calm and its storms fewer. Terran built, and Miriel watched. He gave life to a place that had forgotten it, and she guarded that life with care. One night, as the mist rolled over the plain and stars filled the sky, Miriel stood at the edge of her cave. She held her pendant and looked toward the small light of Terran's home. In her heart, she whispered a promise to protect the silent builder who had unknowingly brought hope back to her world. Below, Terran sat beside his fire, feeling a strange peace he could not explain. He looked toward the cliffs, unaware that eyes of green watched him through the mist, carrying both the weight of loss and the spark of something new. The morning sun rose over Luma 9, spilling soft light across the plain. The air was cool and smelled faintly of minerals and water. Terran stepped out of his home, rubbing his hands together as he looked at the small garden near the stream. The plants had grown taller. Their glowing leaves reflected the sunlight, casting faint blue patches on the ground. He smiled at the simple beauty. Life, even on a quiet moon like this, was persistent. He felt proud that he had nurtured it with his own hands. Today, Terran had a plan. He would explore a cave system he had noticed while walking along the northern ridge. The caves were small but deep, dark spaces filled with strange crystal formations. They were untouched, silent, and mysterious. He packed his bag with tools, a few supplies, and a small lantern that gave gentle light. Before leaving, he checked the home one last time. The walls stood firm, the roof secure, and the stream provided clear water. Everything was ready. As he walked toward the caves, he noticed something unusual. Along the path, smooth stones had been arranged in a line. They led to the edge of the forest. Terran bent down and touched one. It was warm and polished, not like natural stone. He thought for a moment, someone had left these. It was not dangerous. It was intentional. Someone wanted him to follow. Curiosity filled him, but he did not rush. He moved carefully, respecting the path. From her hidden perch, Miriel watched his approach. Her green eyes were steady, her silver skin blending with the pale light. She had been observing him for months, unseen, silently. She felt a strange pull today, a need to show herself. The human had noticed her subtle signs, the gifts she left, the paths she marked, but he had not seen her fully. Today the mist hung low across the plain, softening the edges of the world. It was the perfect moment for a quiet meeting. Terran followed the stones until they led to a shallow depression in the ground, covered with faint moss. He knelt to examine it. There, hidden under the moss, was a small crystal, glowing faintly like a tiny heart. He picked it up and held it carefully. It was smooth and cold, yet somehow comforting. He looked around, noticing the soft shapes of the forest and the faint outline of cliffs in the distance. For the first time, he felt certain that someone had been guiding him here. Muriel stepped closer, though she still remained partly hidden by the mist. She wanted to see his reaction, but feared moving too quickly. She watched as he turned the crystal in his hands, feeling its weight. The human's eyes were gentle and curious. She felt her pulse quicken, the first rush of emotion she had felt in years. No one had looked at her with trust or patience since the storms destroyed her people. He had not even seen her fully, yet somehow she trusted him already. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of the moon's forests. Terran raised his head and noticed movement among the trees. A silver figure emerged, tall and lithe, with eyes shining green like sunlight through moss. He froze for a moment, unsure whether to retreat or speak. The figure did not move aggressively. Its presence felt calm, natural, and strangely familiar. The mist wrapped around her form, softening her edges. Terran slowly set the crystal on a nearby stone and took a cautious step forward. Muriel held her breath, her hands close to her chest. She wanted to speak, but the human might not understand her language. Instead, she extended a small gift toward him, a smooth piece of quartz she had shaped with care. Terran noticed it immediately. He bent down, picked it up, and examined it with wonder. The shape was delicate, almost like a leaf polished smooth. He looked up and their eyes met for the first time. There was no fear, no hostility, only curiosity and quiet understanding. Terran spoke softly, using words from a basic language he knew could be universal in sound. "Hello," he said. Muriel tilted her head, unsure, then slowly repeated the sound in her own way. It was not perfect, but it was close. She smiled faintly, a soft curve of silver lips. Terran smiled too, feeling warmth in his chest. The world seemed to pause around them, holding its breath. For the next few hours, they explored the area together, carefully and without rush. Muriel showed him plants that healed minor scratches and leaves that glowed in the dark. She led him to a small pool where the water shimmered with strange colors. Terran in turn showed her tools he had made, small mechanisms to carry water and light through the cave. They communicated through gestures and shared observations. Words were not necessary. Their understanding grew through patience and attention. As they walked, Terran noticed signs of life he had not seen before. Small glowing insects danced above the plants, and the wind carried sounds that felt like music. Muriel paused and let him observe quietly. She wanted him to see the world as she did, not just through human eyes, but through the lens of the creatures that still survived. She felt hope stir in her heart. Perhaps life on this moon could be beautiful again. When the afternoon sun dipped low, they found a small cavern that opened to a cliff overlooking the valley. The view took Terran's breath away. Below, the plains stretched endlessly, bathed in the golden light of the setting suns. Muriel stepped beside him, silent, and pointed toward the horizon. Terran nodded, understanding that this place was special. He wanted to build here one day, a place where humans and nature could exist together without harm. Night fell slowly. The moons rose, casting soft light across the landscape. Terran lit a small lantern, and Muriel brought crystals that glowed faintly in her hands. The light combined, painting the cave walls in gentle blues and silvers. They sat together, sharing a simple meal of fruits and water. Terran offered her a piece of dried fruit. She took it carefully, nodding in thanks. In that quiet moment, the bond between them deepened. Trust had formed without words, without pressure, only through shared presence and attention. As the hours passed, Terran spoke more, teaching her simple words of human language. Muriel repeated them carefully. Together, they practiced names of plants, actions, and simple greetings. Laughter came quietly, soft and new, filling spaces that had been empty for years. Muriel had forgotten how it felt to share joy with another living being. Terran had forgotten how it felt to meet someone who understood patience, silence, and respect. Their connection was slow but genuine, growing like a small seed under gentle light. The night grew colder, and they decided to return to Terran's home. Muriel guided him back through the misted forest, careful not to get lost. When they reached the small house, Terran showed her the doors, walls, and garden. Muriel touched the stones lightly, marveling at the care with which he had built everything. The human had made a home not just for himself, but for life itself. She felt pride, though she had not created it. She had watched, guided silently, and now saw the beauty of his work fully. Before parting, Muriel placed a small gift by his doorway, a flower she had grown in secret in the caves. Its petals glowed faint blue. Taryn picked it up, smiling widely. "Thank you," he said softly. She nodded, a silent promise to continue watching and helping. Then she melted into the shadows, disappearing into the mist. Taryn watched until she was gone, feeling a strange sense of companionship he could not explain. Someone had touched his life, even without words, and he was grateful. That night, Taryn wrote in his logbook. He recorded the events of the day carefully, describing the plants, the cave, and the mysterious being who had guided him. He wrote a small note of thanks, not knowing if it would ever be read. Then he lay beside the fire, listening to the soft hum of the moon. Outside, Muriel watched the home, her heart light. She had stepped into the world of another, and for the first time in many years felt a part of life again. Two lives connected quietly, by respect, curiosity, and the simple act of noticing one another. The moons climbed high in the sky. Mist curled across the valley and streams of water glimmered like silver threads. Taryn slept peacefully, unaware of her presence. Muriel remained in the shadows, silent and patient, knowing that this trust had been earned. The silent builder had met the watcher, and through small gestures, understanding, and care, two worlds had begun to touch. The home he built in peace had become a bridge between lives, showing that kindness and patience could create bonds stronger than words. As the night deepened, the wind carried soft sounds of distant water and gentle whispers of the leaves. Life on Luma 9 had returned to a rhythm that had been forgotten. The alien widow and the human builder shared it, silently promising to continue their connection. For the first time in centuries, hope felt tangible. Tomorrow would bring more work, more discovery, and more small moments of connection. And through it all, the quiet companionship between the human and the watcher would grow, a gentle reminder that life could thrive in silence and care. The suns rose over Luma 9, casting gentle light across the plains and cliffs. Taryn stood outside his home, feeling the warmth on his face. He had begun to notice that the moon had a rhythm he could understand. The mist that rolled through the forest each morning, the glowing streams, and the soft hum of the wind all seemed to work together. It was a world alive in quiet ways, a world that rewarded patience and attention. Taryn loved this place. Each day brought new discoveries, and each night brought comfort in the shelter he had built with his own hands. This morning, however, something felt different. While tending the garden, he noticed movement at the edge of the forest. He froze, gripping his watering tool tightly. A figure stepped into the light. Its skin shimmered silver in the sun, and its eyes were green like moss. Taryn's heart skipped a beat. He had never seen anyone so strange, yet so familiar. The creature moved slowly with care, not threatening in any way. The human builder took a small step forward, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. The figure was Muriel. She had stepped out of the shadows for the first time. For months she had watched him from afar, guided him silently, and left small gifts. But today she wanted to see him fully. She wanted to know the human who could build a home with such care and patience. She did not speak his language, yet her eyes carried warmth, curiosity, and caution. Taryn, realizing she was not hostile, lowered his tool and offered a small nod. The tension in the air melted. "Hello," Taryn said softly, his voice steady. Muriel tilted her head, curious. She repeated the sound, not perfectly, but clearly. Taryn smiled. It was the first real greeting between them. In that moment, the distance that had separated them for so long began to close. Two beings from different worlds, meeting not by chance, but through quiet persistence and shared respect. Muriel stepped closer. Taryn took a small step forward as well, making sure not to startle her. He pointed to the garden, then to the home, trying to communicate that he had built this place. Muriel nodded, understanding. She touched the stones gently, her fingers tracing the edges. The walls were solid, the roof secure. She felt a wave of admiration for the human who had created something so lasting in a world so vast. Taryn watched her reactions, amazed at the intelligence and grace in her movements. Over the next hours, they began to explore the area together. Muriel led Taryn to parts of the forest he had never seen, showing him glowing plants, strange insects, and crystal formations that hummed when touched. Taryn, in turn, shared tools he had made, small devices to carry water and methods for gathering food without harming the land. They communicated mostly through gestures, pointing and miming, but slowly, Small words of human language and Muriel's language began to mix. Laughter came quietly, soft and genuine, filling spaces that had been empty for years. They reached a small cave near a cliff that overlooked the valley. The view was breathtaking. The plains stretched endlessly, lit by the warm glow of the suns. Muriel stood beside Taryn, her eyes scanning the horizon. She pointed to a distant stream, then to a cluster of glowing rocks. Taryn nodded, understanding. The shared experience of discovery deepened their bond. It was not friendship in the usual sense, nor family. It was a quiet connection between two beings who had survived alone and now found understanding in one another. As the day passed, Taryn and Muriel returned to his home. Muriel observed the walls, the roof, and the garden. She touched the soil and felt the life that he had nurtured. Taryn showed her where he stored tools and food. He offered her water, which she accepted carefully. For the first time, they shared a meal together. Simple, quiet, and meaningful. No words were necessary for trust to form. The alien widow and the human builder were becoming companions in the truest sense. That night, Taryn lit the small fire outside his home. The warmth and light reached Muriel as she approached. She had brought small crystals that glowed softly, placing them around the fire. Their light mingled with the flames, creating gentle patterns on the walls and ground. Taryn watched with awe as she arranged them. The act was careful, precise, and beautiful. It spoke of patience, thoughtfulness, and the desire to create harmony. He realized that though she was not human, her intentions were as pure as his own. They sat quietly, sharing the silence of the night. Taryn pointed to the sky, indicating the twin moons and distant stars. Muriel's eyes followed, reflecting the light above. Taryn spoke softly, naming the stars and the moons in his language. Muriel repeated the sounds imperfectly but with effort. The rhythm of the language, the gentle tones, and the act of sharing created a connection deeper than words. In the stillness, they understood each other completely. Over the next several days, Taryn and Muriel worked together. He showed her how to build small structures from stone and metal scraps. She guided him in finding edible plants, healing herbs, and places where the land could be respected while gathering resources. Together, they repaired part of the cave system, making small paths and markers. Each day brought new understanding, new laughter, and new appreciation for the quiet shared labor. Their efforts turned the area into a place of harmony, blending human construction and natural wonder. Muriel taught Taryn things he had never imagined. She showed him how the wind could carry sound to distant areas, how glowing plants indicated safe water, and how certain crystals could store faint energy. Taryn absorbed the knowledge, using it to improve his home and garden. In return, he taught her how to construct small tools, gather resources efficiently, and protect the area from unexpected storms. They complemented each other perfectly, two beings from different worlds learning and teaching without conflict. One evening, after a long day of work, they returned to the cliff cave. The sun dipped below the horizon and the sky was painted in orange, purple, and blue. Muriel pointed to the colors, showing Taryn how the skies changed with seasons. Taryn nodded, captivated by the subtle beauty. They sat together, sharing fruit and water. The quiet companionship had grown into trust and understanding. Each knew the other would not harm or abandon the space. This was a partnership of care and attention, formed naturally through patience and respect. Taryn began to feel a sense of belonging he had not felt in years. Muriel's presence, though strange and alien, brought comfort. He no longer felt isolated. He understood that life on Luma 9 was not meant to be endured alone. It could be shared, even with someone who spoke a different language, who had a different history, and who looked nothing like him. The act of working together, sharing space, and respecting each other had created a bond stronger than words. Muriel, for her part, felt a joy she had thought lost forever. The human was kind, careful, and patient. He did not rush, he did not destroy, and he did not demand. His very presence was gentle, a contrast to the harshness of the world around them. Watching him build, work, and care reminded her of the lives of her people before the storms. She realized that hope could return, and life could flourish again, even after centuries of silence and loss. As the nights passed, the two of them established a quiet routine. Taryn worked during the day, exploring, building, and tending the garden. Muriel guided him, watched over him, and shared knowledge. At night, they sat together by the fire, exchanging small gifts, observing the stars, and speaking softly. Their trust deepened with every shared task, every quiet laugh, every moment of understanding. They were no longer alone. They were companions in the truest sense, each bringing something vital to the other's life. One night, a faint sound reached them from the forest. The wind carried the echo of distant water and soft rustling. Terran looked toward the trees, and Muriel placed a hand on his shoulder, signaling calm. They both waited, observing quietly. Nothing harmful approached. Instead, the sounds reminded them that life existed beyond their immediate world. They understood that together, they could face the challenges of the moon and thrive. Their home had become more than a shelter. It was a symbol of harmony, care, and possibility. By the end of the 4th week, Terran's home had expanded. A small path led from the garden to the cave, lined with stones and glowing plants. Muriel had helped him build small shelters for the creatures that lived nearby, ensuring their safety. Terran added tools, furniture, and storage that complemented the natural environment. The area became a blend of human ingenuity and natural beauty, a space where life could flourish. It was a testament to cooperation, patience, and understanding. For the first time, Terran felt truly at peace on Luma 9. He had discovered not only the beauty of the land, but also the value of connection. Muriel had shown him that life could be shared, that silence could be meaningful, and that trust could grow without force. The alien widow had returned hope to a man who had once thought himself alone. And in return, Terran had given Muriel a new purpose, a new reason to move beyond the shadow of her past. The twin suns of Luma 9 rose together, spilling warm light across the silver plains. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of minerals and water. Terran stood outside his home, stretching his arms as he looked at the small garden he had nurtured over many weeks. The glowing plants shimmered under the sunlight, their colors vibrant against the soft gray land. He smiled. Life on this moon had become steady and alive in ways he had never expected. Every day he worked, built, and explored, and every night brought calm and peace. Today felt different. There was a stillness in the air that was heavier yet gentle. Terran sensed that something important was about to happen. He walked toward the ridge, taking careful steps on the smooth stones he had laid along the path. The cliffs stretched high above him, and the mist clung to the rocks like a soft veil. He paused and looked at the horizon. The valley below glowed faintly from the morning sun. Everything was quiet, except for the faint rustle of leaves and the soft hum of the streams. High above, hidden among the cliffs and silver trees, Muriel observed him. Her green eyes scanned the plain, her heart beating quietly with anticipation. She had watched him for months, guiding him silently, helping him without revealing herself fully. Their friendship had grown slowly, through trust, gestures, and shared discovery. Today she felt it was time for them to truly meet, not just in glimpses or gifts, but face to face. The bond between them had deepened enough for her to step fully into the open. As Terran reached the edge of the ridge, he saw movement in the mist. At first he froze, unsure of what he was seeing. Then a silver figure stepped into the pale sunlight. Muriel stood there, tall and graceful, her skin reflecting the light, her eyes green and soft. Terran's heart beat faster. For months he had felt a presence, noticed signs, and found gifts, but he had never seen anyone so clearly. He felt no fear, only awe. The alien being before him was unlike anything he had encountered, yet her presence felt comforting. Muriel stepped closer, slowly and carefully. She held out her hands in a gesture of peace. Terran nodded, lowering his arms to show that he meant no harm. "Hello," he said softly, using the simple language he had been practicing. Muriel repeated the sound imperfectly but intentionally. The exchange carried no words of command, no threat, only the quiet communication of two beings seeking understanding. In that moment, the distance of months of silent observation melted away. They were finally meeting fully. Over the following hours, they explored the area together. Muriel showed Terran deeper caves where glowing crystals hung from ceilings like frozen waterfalls. She guided him to pools of clear water where plants with luminous leaves grew in abundance. Terran, in return, shared tools he had made for collecting water, moving soil, and protecting fragile plants. They worked side by side, not needing words to understand each other's intentions. Their actions were careful, deliberate, and thoughtful. Trust had been built through silence, observation, and mutual respect. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange, purple, and soft blue, They returned to Taryn's home. Muriel's eyes lingered on the walls, the roof, and the garden. She touched the stones lightly, feeling the energy of the man who had shaped this place. Taryn noticed her attention and smiled. "This is our work now," he said, pointing to the garden and the small path they had made together. Muriel nodded, understanding completely. The home was no longer just his. It was a space of shared effort and shared care. That night, they sat by the fire outside the home. Taryn lit a lantern and Muriel placed small glowing crystals around it. Their light blended with the fire, creating a soft, calming glow across the plain. They shared a meal of fruits, water, and herbs from the garden. Taryn offered her some cooked root he had gathered, and she accepted it carefully, tasting it with a soft hum of appreciation. The quiet companionship that had grown over weeks now felt tangible, alive, and strong. Both understood the importance of this bond, though neither fully expressed it in words. Over the next few days, they worked together to expand the home and the surrounding area. Taryn built small paths, reinforced walls, and designed shelters for the local creatures. Muriel guided him to safe areas, pointed out plants for healing, and ensured that the ecosystem remained balanced. Their efforts turned the home into a miniature sanctuary, where nature and human ingenuity existed together harmoniously. Each task strengthened their understanding of each other and the world around them. One evening, Taryn noticed a faint glow along the horizon. It was a scout ship from a human colony, moving slowly across the sky. He felt a mix of excitement and uncertainty. He had spent months building a life here, learning and connecting with Muriel. Would the arrival of humans change everything? He glanced at Muriel, who stood silently beside him. Her green eyes reflected the light from the approaching ship. They did not speak, but a silent agreement passed between them. Whatever came, they would face it together. The human scout ship landed at a distance from the home. Taryn approached cautiously, Muriel beside him. From the ship came a team of humans, curious and cautious. They were surprised to see a fully built home in the middle of Luma 9, a home that appeared alive with care and thought. Taryn introduced himself simply, explaining that he had been living here, building his home, and exploring the moon. Muriel watched quietly, her presence acknowledged by the humans as part of the environment. Though they did not yet understand her nature, the humans explored respectfully, noticing the garden, the tools, and the care Taryn had taken to integrate with the land. Taryn spoke of the streams, the caves, and the glowing plants. Muriel assisted silently, guiding them to safe areas and pointing out features without needing words. The humans marveled at the harmony of human skill and the moon's natural beauty. They realized that the home was not just a shelter. It was a testament to patience, care, and understanding of life in all its forms. As the scout team prepared to leave, Taryn made a choice. He told them that he would remain on Luma 9, that this was his home. Muriel stood beside him, offering silent support. The humans respected his decision, noting that the bond he shared with this strange alien being was a rare and valuable connection. They left peacefully, leaving Taryn and Muriel in the quiet beauty of their shared space. The moons rose high and the twin suns had set, leaving soft light reflected off the silver plains. Over the following weeks, Taryn and Muriel worked to make the area even more harmonious. Paths were widened, plants were carefully arranged, and small shelters were reinforced. They built a network of light crystals that guided travelers gently through the area without disturbing wildlife. Each night they sat by the fire, sharing food, observations, and quiet moments. Taryn spoke to Muriel using simple words and gestures. She responded, learning quickly, and they communicated in ways beyond words, through understanding, care, and shared action. One morning after a clear night, Taryn climbed the ridge to watch the sunrise. Muriel followed him quietly. Together they stood, looking over the valley below. The garden glowed softly, the paths they had built shimmered in faint blue light, and the small stream reflected the rising suns. It was a vision of life flourishing peacefully, a harmony between effort and nature. Taryn felt pride and peace. Muriel felt hope and belonging. Together they had shaped not just a home, but a world in miniature that reflected patience, kindness, and understanding. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of life continued. Taryn explored, gathered materials, and built structures with care. Muriel guided, observed, and nurtured the environment. Their bond grew stronger with every shared task, every gesture of care, and every moment of quiet companionship. The home became more than a building. It became a symbol of what could be achieved when respect, patience, and kindness guided action. It was a place where life, human and alien, could thrive together. One night, as the twin moons rose and mist rolled over the valley, Taryn and Muriel sat side by side, watching the stars. The air was calm, the streams softly glowing and the land peaceful. They did not need words. The silence spoke for them. It said that trust had been built. It said that connection was possible across worlds. It said that patience and care could create harmony, even in the most remote and silent places. Taryn reached out and touched Muriel's hand. She accepted it, her fingers warm and soft. They sat together, knowing that this bond, formed in quiet observation and shared effort, was lasting and strong.